Polish my shoes and you'll be the new CEO. Joked the billionaire, but what the poor boy did next. Laughter ripped through the glass-walled office like a slap. Sharp and humiliating, echoing off white desks and polished floors as the billionaire lifted his foot and planted it inches from the boy's chest. Cameras flashed. Phones rose. Executives grinned. The boy stood barefoot on cold marble, dirt streaked across his arms, eyes fixed on the scuffed leather hovering before him while a room full of power waited to see if he would bend. 1 second stretched into 2. The billionaire's smile widened, daring him to kneel, daring him to disappear. The boy didn't move. He didn't flinch. And in that frozen beat, while the billionaire's leg trembled slightly, while laughter thinned into confused murmurs, something electric snapped through the room. Because defiance, quiet and unannounced, had just walked into a place built to crush it. The meeting had been staged for effect. The billionaire loved spectacle. Quarterly numbers were up, investors were visiting, and morale needed a human moment for the company's internal feed. So security had let a street kid inside, part of a charity partnership no one bothered to explain. The boy had been handed a badge that didn't open doors and told to wait by the wall. He waited. He watched men and women in tailored suits congratulate each other for profits made far from consequences. He listened as words like disruption and vision floated above him, untethered from anything real. Then the billionaire noticed him. "Who's this?" he asked, amused, like he'd found a prop someone forgot to remove. "A charity guest." An assistant murmured. The billionaire's eyes sparkled. He thrived on moments like this. "Come here," he said, curling a finger. The boy obeyed, stepping forward into the open space at the center of the room, suddenly surrounded by authority and cameras. The billionaire stood, immaculate, towering. "You know what a CEO is?" he asked, voice light, joking. The boy nodded once. The billionaire laughed. "Polish my shoes and you'll be the new CEO." That was the line. The punchline. The room laughed on cue. Some louder than others. A few uncomfortable smiles flickered, then died, drowned out by applause. The billionaire lifted his foot higher, shoe angled, offering it like a dare. The boy looked at the shoe. The camera zoomed in. The moment was supposed to end with submission, with a lesson disguised as humor, with power affirmed. Instead, the boy lifted his gaze and met the billionaire's eyes. "I don't know how," he said quietly. The room stilled, unsure how to react. The billionaire chuckled. "I'm sure you'll figure it out." "I don't mean the shoes," the boy said. Silence dropped hard. Someone coughed. A phone lowered. The billionaire's smile tightened. "Then what do you mean?" The boy inhaled, steadying himself. "I don't know how to pretend." The words landed wrong. Not loud, not dramatic. Just wrong enough to fracture the room's balance. The billionaire's foot hovered, absurd now. He lowered it slowly, his amusement curdling into irritation masked as curiosity. "Pretend what?" he asked. "Pretend that this is funny," the boy said. "Pretend that this makes you powerful." A ripple moved through the executive's unease, disbelief, the instinct to shut this down. Security shifted near the doors. The billionaire laughed again, but it was thinner. "Careful," he said. "You're getting brave." The boy nodded. "I know." He took a step back, creating space. The cameras kept rolling. No one told them to stop. "I came here because they said this place was about ideas," the boy continued. "About changing the world. But you didn't ask me anything. You asked me to kneel." The billionaire's jaw set. "This is not a debate." "I didn't ask for one," the boy replied. "You did." A murmur spread. Someone whispered, "Is this scripted?" Another shook their head. The billionaire glanced toward his PR director, who looked pale. Enough, the billionaire said, voice hardening. You've made your point. I haven't, the boy said. You made it for me. He reached into the pocket of his oversized shirt and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn thin. You said polish your shoes, he said. So I looked at them. He knelt not in submission, but to the floor and set the paper down between them. It was a printout. A financial statement. The company logo at the top. Red circles marked numbers, margins, cuts, outsourcing lines. A gasp escaped someone in the back. I found this in the trash, the boy said. By the elevators. I can't read everything, but I know when numbers mean people losing jobs. My mom worked at one of your factories. It closed. She said it was efficiency. The billionaire's face drained of color. Where did you get that? You threw it away, the boy said. Like me. Security moved now. The billionaire raised a hand, stopping them. He stared at the paper, then at the boy. Cameras captured every second. You think this makes you smart? The billionaire said quietly. No, the boy replied. It makes me tired. The room held its breath. I don't want your job, the boy continued. I want you to see what you're stepping on. He stood, leaving the paper on the floor like evidence. You joked about being CEO, he said. A CEO decides who gets dignity. You decided I don't. The billionaire's laughter was gone. In its place was something brittle, defensive. This meeting is over, he snapped. No one moved, because something had shifted. Because the joke had turned inside out. Because a barefoot boy had just forced a room full of power to look down and see itself reflected in a scuffed shoe and a discarded report. As security finally stepped forward. The boy didn't resist. He walked out on his own, head high, eyes forward. The cameras followed until the doors closed behind him. Inside the boardroom, the billionaire stood very still, staring at the paper on the floor. Around him, executives avoided his gaze, suddenly aware that the story they thought they were filming had just rewritten itself. And outside, in the hallway where echoes lingered, the boy kept walking, unaware that the first crack in an empire had just been made, not by rebellion or rage, but by refusing to kneel when the world expected it. The doors closed behind the boy with a soft hydraulic hiss. But the silence he left behind was deafening. Inside the boardroom, no one laughed anymore. Phones hovered uselessly in hands that no longer knew where to point. The billionaire remained standing, eyes fixed on the paper on the floor as if it might move on its own, as if numbers could crawl back into place and restore the balance he was used to commanding. Who let him in? He demanded finally, his voice sharp enough to cut glass. No one answered. An assistant shifted, then stopped. A senior executive cleared his throat and pretended to check his tablet. The PR director's face had gone pale, her mind already racing through worst-case scenarios, angles, leaks, backlash. The joke had been meant to humanize the billionaire. Instead, it had stripped him bare. Get that, he snapped, pointing at the paper. A junior analyst bent down, picked it up with careful fingers, and glanced at it before handing it over. The red circles were unmistakable. Internal, sensitive. The kind of document that never left secure folders, except when someone wanted it forgotten. Where did this come from? The billionaire asked again, quieter now. It's last quarter's restructuring summary, the analyst said. Marked for disposal after review. The billionaire's jaw tightened. He remembered it. The meeting. The vote. The language they'd used: streamlining, optimization, necessary pain. He hadn't thought about where the paper went after. He never did. Outside the boardroom, the boy walked past reception with security flanking him, not touching, just close enough to make a point. Employees stared openly now. Some recognized him from the screens in their hands. Others only sensed the disturbance, the way authorities seemed suddenly unstable, like a table missing a leg. "Where are you taking me?" the boy asked calmly. "Out," one guard replied. "Okay," the boy said. He didn't argue. He didn't plead. That unsettled them more than resistance would have. In the lobby, sunlight poured through the glass walls, bright and indifferent. The boy paused, looking back once at the building, at the floors stacked above him like layers of decisions made without faces attached. "Hey," a voice called out. They turned. A woman in a tailored suit hurried toward them, breathless. The Billionaire's PR director. Her smile was tight, professional panic barely contained. "Wait," she said to the guards. "Give us a second." They hesitated, then stepped back. She crouched to the boy's level, lowering her voice. "What you did in there," she began carefully, "that wasn't appropriate." The boy nodded. "I know." Her rehearsed speech faltered. "Then why did you do it?" "Because no one else would," he replied. She studied him, searching for bravado, for manipulation, for something she could categorize and neutralize. She found none. Just resolve. "You realize," she said slowly, "this could have consequences. For you, for your family." "I already have those," the boy said. "They just don't have cameras." The words hit harder than the juice ever could. She straightened, unsettled, and waved the guards on. The boy walked out into the city, swallowed by noise and motion, unaware of how quickly the inside of that building was beginning to rot. By evening, the clip was everywhere. Not the polished internal feed the billionaire had planned, but raw footage laughter, the raised shoe, the stillness when the boy refused to kneel. Social media did what it always did. Slowed it down, zoomed in, dissected expressions. The joke curdled in the public eye. Comment sections ignited. "This isn't funny. Power trip. That kid destroyed him without raising his voice." The company's stock wobbled. Not a crash, just a tremor. Enough to be noticed. Emergency meetings followed. Lawyers advised silence. PR suggested reframing, highlight the charity, the misunderstanding, the billionaire's playful intent. Someone floated the idea of inviting the boy back for a staged apology and scholarship announcement. The billionaire listened, arms crossed, his patience thinning with every word. "You think money fixes this?" He snapped. "It's what people understand," someone replied. He stood abruptly. "Get me everything you can on that boy. Family, background, why he was here." The request hung heavy. The room complied anyway. Across town, the boy sat on the edge of a narrow bed in a shelter room, shoes still in his hands. He hadn't polished them. He never intended to. His mother sat beside him, eyes wide with fear and pride tangled so tightly she couldn't tell them apart. "They're talking about you everywhere," she said, holding up a phone. "People are saying things." "Good things?" he asked. "Loud things," she replied. A knock came at the door. A volunteer peeked in, nervous. "There are reporters downstairs." The boy shook his head. "I don't want to talk." They respected that. For now. The next morning, the billionaire arrived early at headquarters, earlier than he had in years. He rode the elevator alone, staring at his reflection in the mirrored walls. The suit still fit. The posture still commanded space. But something was off. The image no longer obeyed him. On his desk lay a folder. The boy's name. His mother's employment history. The factory closure. The severance package that barely covered rent. The shelter application. The billionaire closed the folder slowly. For the first time, the numbers had faces. He called an unscheduled board meeting. When they assembled, bleary-eyed and defensive, he didn't start with damage control. He started with a question. "Do you remember approving this?" he asked, sliding the same marked document onto the table. Some nodded. Some looked away. We laughed yesterday, he continued. We laughed because we thought power was funny. No one interrupted. I built this company, he said, voice steady but low. And yesterday, a child walked into my boardroom and showed me exactly what we've become. A director scoffed nervously. With respect, this is an overreaction. He embarrassed you. That's all. The billionaire's eyes snapped up. No, he said. He exposed us. Silence fell. Outside, protests began to form small at first, then growing. Not riots. Just signs. Shoes held up in the air. A simple message scrawled on cardboard. We will not kneel. By the end of the day, the billionaire's name trended worldwide. Not as a punchline. As a symbol. And somewhere between the boardroom and the shelter, between a raised shoe and a refused kneel, the balance of power was shifting slowly, painfully toward a reckoning no amount of money could quietly erase. By the third day, the company was no longer reacting. It was unraveling. What began as outrage had hardened into scrutiny. Journalists stopped asking why the billionaire joked and started asking how many times he'd done worse when no one was watching. Former employees came forward, first anonymously, then openly, their voices shaking not with fear anymore, but with something closer to relief. They talked about humiliations framed as motivation, layoffs announced by email minutes before security escorts arrived. Entire departments erased with the stroke of a pen and a smile in a quarterly call. The boys' refusal to kneel had cracked something open. And now everything behind it was spilling out. Inside headquarters, legal teams worked around the clock. Conference rooms turned into war rooms, walls plastered with timelines and damage projections. The billionaire sat through briefing after briefing, his expression unreadable. But the strain showed in the way his fingers drummed against the table, the way he snapped when an answer came a second too late. The board wants reassurance, the general counsel said carefully. They're concerned about exposure. They're concerned about profit, the billionaire replied, and control, another executive added before thinking better of it. That earned him a stare sharp enough to end the conversation. Across the city, the boy watched none of it directly. His world remained small school, the shelter, his mother's tired smile at the end of long shifts. But the consequences of that single moment followed him anyway. Strangers recognized him now. Some thanked him. Others asked questions he didn't know how to answer. You're brave, one woman said, gripping his shoulder too tightly. I was just honest, he replied. At school, teachers treaded carefully, unsure whether to treat him like a hero or a liability. One pulled him aside after class. Do you understand what you did? She asked. He thought for a moment. I didn't do it to change things, he said. I just didn't want to lie. That answer traveled farther than he knew. Back at the company, an internal email leaked an early draft of a response strategy that suggested highlighting the boy's ungrateful behavior and framing the incident as a lesson in respect. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Sponsors began calling. Partners postponed meetings. The stock dipped again, sharper this time. The board demanded decisive action. We need a sacrifice, one director said bluntly during an emergency session. Someone to take the fall. A narrative reset. Eyes turned, subtly at first, toward the billionaire himself. He noticed. Of course he did. He had built these people, elevated them, taught them how power worked. And now they were using his own lessons against him. You want me to apologize, he said flatly. We want you to survive, the chair corrected. The billionaire leaned back, considering. Apologies were currency now. Carefully worded remorse, a donation, a scholarship in the boy's name. It would cost him money, not authority. Or so they thought. "Bring him here," he said suddenly. The room stilled. "Who?" someone asked. "The boy." Silence stretched. "That's risky," the PR director said. Uncontrolled interaction. "I didn't ask for a plan," he cut in. "I asked for him." By the time the request reached the shelter, it came wrapped in politeness and security assurances. The boy's mother read the message twice, her hands trembling. "They want you to go back," she said. "To see him." The boy looked up from his homework. "Why?" She didn't have a good answer. They arrived at the headquarters through a side entrance, escorted past glass walls and curious stares. The building felt different now, quieter, tighter, like it was holding its breath. In a private conference room, the billionaire waited alone. No cameras. No audience. The boy stood across from him, small against the long table. Barefoot again by choice this time. "You embarrassed me," the billionaire said. Breaking the silence. "I didn't mean to," the boy replied. "You did that yourself." The words landed without cruelty, which made them worse. The billionaire studied him, searching for anger, for fear. He found neither. Only a steady gaze that refused to shrink. "Do you know who I am?" he asked. "Yes," the boy said. "You're someone people listen to." "And yet you didn't," the billionaire said. "I listened," the boy corrected. "I just didn't agree." For a moment, something like admiration flickered in the billionaire's eyes, quickly smothered by habit. "They want me to apologize," he said. "To you, publicly. And will you?" The boy asked. The billionaire hesitated. "It depends." "On what?" "On whether you understand the cost of what you started." The boy thought about the factory, the shelter, his mother's exhaustion. "I understand the cost of staying quiet," he said. That was the moment the billionaire realized this wasn't a negotiation. "Why did you really do it?" he asked quietly. The boy reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, the same document from the boardroom, creased now, worn at the edges. "This," he said. "You signed it. It closed my mom's job. You didn't know my name. I just wanted you to see me." The billionaire took the paper, hands heavy. He remembered signing it between calls, barely glancing at the details. "I see you now," he said. "Then do something that matters," the boy replied. News of the meeting leaked anyway. Speculation exploded. Had the boy been threatened? Paid off? Was this the calm before a settlement? The next morning, the billionaire walked onto the stage alone. No script. No teleprompter. "I made a joke," he said into the microphones. "And in doing so, I revealed something ugly about myself and about the company I lead." Gasps rippled through the room. "I am stepping down as CEO. Effective immediately." Shock froze the air. He continued, voice steady. "Not because I was forced, but because leadership without humility is just cruelty with better lighting." The announcement detonated across the world. But the real consequences were still coming, because stepping down was only the beginning, and the boy, underestimated and unheard for so long, had one final influence left to wield. The world expected chaos after the resignation. Instead, something far more unsettling happened. Silence. Markets paused. Commentators stumbled over each other trying to explain why a man who had survived lawsuits, scandals, and hostile takeovers would step down over a joke told to a barefoot boy. Analysts searched for hidden deals, secret settlements, backroom leverage. None of it fit. The numbers didn't add up. The narrative refused to cooperate. Inside the company, the vacuum was immediate and brutal. Executives who had built their careers on proximity to power suddenly found themselves exposed. Without the billionaire's shadow, their authority thinned. Decisions that once went unquestioned were now debated. Emails asking for clarification multiplied. Middle managers hesitated. The culture once driven by fear disguised as excellence began to fracture. The interim CEO was announced within 48 hours. A competent name, safe, predictable. But the employees weren't watching the board anymore. They were watching the boy. He didn't return to the shelter as a celebrity. He returned as a problem. Donations arrived, unsolicited and overwhelming. Journalists camped outside. Politicians made calls. Everyone wanted him to represent something. Courage, poverty, integrity, a movement. He refused all of it. "I didn't ask to be a symbol," he told his mother quietly one night. "I just didn't want to be invisible." But invisibility was no longer an option. The company's largest institutional investors requested a private meeting with him. The request shocked everyone, including the boy himself. "They don't want you," a legal aide explained nervously. "They want what you represent." He shook his head. "Then they don't understand." The meeting took place in the same boardroom where the joke had been made. The same long table. The same city skyline. The difference was who sat at the head. No billionaire. Just empty leather. The investors spoke carefully, choosing words like stability and optics and long-term trust. They talked about public confidence and ethical realignment. They proposed foundations, advisory roles, symbolic gestures. The boy listened patiently. Then he asked a single question. "Why does everyone want to fix the image?" He said, "But no one wants to fix the people?" The room fell quiet. "You can replace a CEO," he continued. "You can change a logo. But if the same people stay in charge, nothing changes." One investor frowned. "Are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting you stop asking me what I want," the boy said evenly, "and start asking the people who work for you what they need." That meeting ended without a deal, but it didn't end without consequences. Within weeks, employee-led councils formed inside the company. Anonymous surveys leaked. Data emerged showing patterns of abuse, exploitation, and silence that went back decades. Regulators took notice. So did competitors. The board tried to contain it. They failed. Under mounting pressure, 3 senior executives resigned. Then 2 more. Then an entire division headlined for personal reasons that fooled no one. Lawsuits followed. Settlements were reached quietly. Policies were rewritten publicly. And then came the move no one expected. The interim CEO announced a restructuring of ownership influence granting. Employees voting representation tied to performance and tenure. Not charity. Not symbolism. Power. The financial world erupted. "This is unprecedented," analysts argued. Dangerous. But productivity rose. Attrition dropped. Innovation accelerated. For the first time, people felt invested in more than survival. The boy never took a role. He never took money. He never took credit. When asked why, he answered simply, "If I accept power I didn't earn, I become what I stood up to." The former billionaire watched all of this from a distance. He sold assets, divested quietly, donated without announcements. For the first time in his life, he lived without commanding rooms, without assistance, without applause. One afternoon, months later, he stood outside a small community center opening on the edge of the city. No cameras, no banners with his name. Inside, children studied, ate, laughed. The boy was there, not waiting, just existing. The billionaire hesitated at the door. "You don't owe me anything," the boy said without turning around. "I know," the man replied. They stood side by side, watching a group of kids argue over a chessboard. "I built an empire," the billionaire said quietly. And I didn't know how small it was until you refused to kneel." The boy nodded. "Power isn't what people give you," he said. "It's what they can't take away." The billionaire swallowed. "What will you do now?" The boy smiled faintly. "Finish school. Help where I can live. No speeches. No grand endings. Just consequence." Years later, business schools would teach the incident, not as a scandal, but as a turning point. A case study not in leadership failure, but in moral interruption. The day a system stumbled because someone it was built to ignore refused to play his part. And in the end, the greatest reversal wasn't that a billionaire lost his throne. It was that a poor boy proved he never needed one to change everything.